Dr. King, thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate it. It's a pleasure hearing you speak tonight. I know you speak to a lot of young folks around the country, the next generation of leaders. Are you encouraged or discouraged by what you're hearing from them, for the most part?
That's an interesting question. I think for the most part, I'm encouraged. And when I say I'm encouraged, because, you know, it's easier to redirect or to kind of call in people than it is to push and cajole and convince and beg and all of that kind of stuff. So I like the energy that I see that comes in the passion, especially from young people. Yeah, I've been speaking now for, what, 40, my golly, about 42, close to 42 or so years.
Okay.
And I recall so often going to college campuses and the apathy, the complacency, the lack of interest in any societal issues. And now it seems to predominate the conversations, the questions, the aspirations of young people. And so I'm encouraged by that. And my job now as someone who's much older and have been through my seasons of, you know, activism as a young person, and the things that I know about my father's nonviolent philosophy and methodology, I see myself now as a teacher and a guide, you know, in all of this, because I think that's what's critical for all of that passion and energy. It needs strategy. It you know, it needs a plan. You know, it needs target.
Yeah.
You know.
I know the message is probably different every time, but if there's one thing you want people to take away from one of your speeches, what would that be?
You know, probably what my mother said: struggle is a never-ending process. Freedom is never really won. You earn it and win it in every generation. Because I don't want people to ever get to that place of apathy again. I think we spent too many years there holistically. I'm not saying that there weren't people active, but we need people understanding that we have to continue, you know, to fight for, and we have to continue to preserve what's been gained, and we have to continue to advance further freedoms in our world.
The world, of course, continues to mourn the death of Tyre Nichols, and tonight you spoke about law enforcement and the work that needs to be done there. There is no one answer, of course, but which direction should we be headed in at this point? What's a good way to start to change things?
You know, I don't know if I really have an answer. I'm still, you know, thinking through all of this. I do know that an area that is not really concentrated on or invested in a lot is trauma. You know, and I know it's much deeper than trauma, but holistically, you know, we've been in this cycle of facing trauma over and over again in this nation. And, you know, even those that are in law enforcement, I wonder sometimes what kind of attention do they get from their side of the equation, you know, in the work that they do. That kind of work is intense, you know, to go on the front line of things when that it is real danger, you know. And what is that mindset, having to wake up to that every day, not knowing, you know, especially those that are on that front line, whether you're going to, you know, end up in the middle of some, you know, gun battle, and especially in a society now where guns are everywhere.
Yeah.
So, you know, I do think while we're looking at policy, I think we have to have a holistic approach. We got to deal with the trauma that's in communities over and over again when this happens. You know, we just stack it on top and we just keep going, you know, and the explosions that occur as a result of that. This stuff is real. You know, we're not animals. We're not robots. We're human beings with a lot of emotions and feelings and experiences and all of that kind of stuff. And we owe it to ourselves to bring some humanity to all of this. And that's what's missing. The officers that did that the other day, they didn't see a human being. Something happened where they checked out and they didn't see the humanity of this man, which is very disturbing. And that happens over and over again. Officers don't see the humanity. They see an enemy. They see something dangerous, almost like they're looking at an animal. And these are human beings, in spite of those instances where there may be some wrongdoing, but instances in most cases that we keep seeing over and over again are innocent people. So, you know, I don't think any of us has the answer to this, but I know we have to look at a holistic approach.
I follow you on social media, and I can remember a few of your posts where you talked about people who look at your dad back in the 50s and 60s, and they assumed that he was beloved. You point out he was not beloved, that many people hated him. You say point blank, he was assassinated. He was saying things that, you know, people didn't want to hear. Why do you think it's important for you to give that perspective?
About him not being, because I think there's a false sense of the Martin Luther King we know today that is so iconic and revered, has always been that way. And I want to remind them, no, that's not the case. And part of it is, too, that he's not here in flesh to challenge us. So it's easier for us to revere him. But they need to understand that, because in this struggle where you're trying to do the right thing, he's a symbol of you're not going to be loved. There are going to be haters, real haters. But yet, if you look at the after effect, because I believe he did the right thing and he was humble in it as well, that's part of the revering too. It's because of the posture that he had. He had a lot of humility, and he was obedient to what he needed to do. And after his life was over, there's a redemption. He lost his life, but there's a redemption now for so many people. John Lewis is an example. What he went through, you know, my dad taught, and mom and them reiterated that unearned suffering is redemptive. John Lewis was a perfect example of that. He got the benefit in his life, but I, as Dr. King's daughter, I'm able to benefit because of that sacrifice. So I think it's very important that people know that. There's more to Dr. King than the feel-good and the quotable parts that, you know, fit our agendas.
Final question I want to ask you about your mom. I had a pleasure to meet your mom years ago when we met before. Obviously, it was an honor for me. You tell people all the time, don't forget my mom, a civil rights icon in her own right, the founder of the King Center. What do you want people to know about her strength?
Oh, wow. You know, my mother was unbreakable. You know, she had such a very quiet strength. She wasn't loud. She was very dignified in the way that she carried herself, and very determined in everything. And she had a kind of confidence that I've never seen before. You know, this was a woman who many people thought she was, you know, doing the wrong thing by creating the King Center and should have been just raising her children. That's all she should have been doing. Many people who thought, you're crazy to think you're going to get a King holiday. But she knew that it was going to happen. I don't know, she had this, because of her determination and never give up spirit, and because of what she faced as a child. She came from some situations where her dad was always pulled over the side of the road and a gun in his face. She never knew if he would come home safe. So she was kind of prepared, you know, for all of the world that she would meet later with my father, and even as she tried to build the center, you know, all these adversaries, people trying to destroy her name and her efforts, and yet she just continued to persevere because she had something in her that she knew she must do, and she believed it would happen. I don't know a lot of people like that.
Dr. King, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.